In episode 0 of our podcast, we were talking about agile project management possibilities outside software and IT. Meanwhile, we are 2 years down the road in implementing this particular approach in our own marketing department. So today we're going to dive deep into this case with our one and only Chief Marketing Officer Agata Żmudzińska. I'm Deviniti Hryb, and welcome to episode 2 of Software Home by Deviniti. Just a quick summary to get started. Agile marketing was introduced in 2010. In 2012, a group of practitioners created the Agile Marketing Manifesto at the Sprint Zero meetup in San Francisco. The manifesto is based on its software companion and included a couple of additional points specific to marketing operations. Since then, we can observe steady growth in popularity of this approach among marketing teams. Agata, what was your first impression of Agile marketing? When did you first learn about it?
I remember that I heard about Agile methods for the first time in one of my previous companies. We were expanding our IT teams in a short time. New colleagues tried to explain to us what Agile was. They give an example of a customer who wants to order a tank, but the team, instead of building various components of the tank, starts building a skateboard as a simple device with wheels. And after a couple of years, the client ends up with something totally different from the first drawings, like 3 portable remote-controlled barrels, because the requirements were changing all the time. But this is a good effect. It meets the client's expectations, but indeed in a different way than planned.
That's interesting. So, Agile marketing basically means shorter, faster, and cheaper. But that's the theory, and what's the practical point of view?
In my opinion, it's impossible to speed up some activities or change the order of marketing processes flexibly. If we do it, we accumulate something we can call marketing debt or brand debt, similar to technical debt in software production. Don't get me wrong, marketing can be quick, but it's very sequential. We just can't skip certain parts of the process, like research before we put something into the world and an analytics session after some time it's been public. So, in marketing, I associate Agile most with experimenting. For example, releasing small pieces and checking how they work. In practice, it's really fun to do some experiments and see what works for us. However, this approach doesn't fit every project. If we have a developed product with strong positioning and an exact sales target, there is no place for fun and experiment. Even for Google, the experiment success rate is about 10%. I can't afford to tell the board members that we're going to fail 90% of our targets, but we will do it quickly.
There lies your love for sailing, I suppose. I saw one author's opinion that compares marketing to captaining a ship where a quick change of the course isn't possible.
I prefer smaller boats that I can steer as I wish. But even on a racing yacht, you always have to adapt to the weather conditions. So basically, the marketing department should fit the business needs and be a little bit more flexible than they are. When we suddenly have a long queue of emails with release notes we must send to the customers of different products, we set up a small team that does it in 2 or 3 weeks. But it doesn't mean we should stop our regular campaigns or other projects because of this. It's just a small priority shift for a couple of people.
Okay, and what if there are too many changes at a time? We've already faced this, and it was difficult to plan ahead for more than a couple of weeks. The business expects predictability and prefers long-term strategies, though.
You know it better than me. Every day something changes in the marketer's job. Search engine rankings, social media roles, new communications channels appear, and so on. This state of things is making our work more and more challenging. We gotta be always on our toes and be constantly learning new things to keep up with the changes. At the same time, we need to keep some things fixed so we don't go totally crazy. One of these is a long-term brand and marketing strategy, which basically tells us who we are, where we are going, and how we communicate with our clients. If you're a recognizable company with a broad client base and at least a couple of years on the market, you shouldn't fiddle with your brand name or key messaging, but you can rebuild a company website from scratch if you need it. When we know what our goal is, what we want to achieve in the end, and what to do along the way, we can be more flexible about how we do it. One of my favorite quotes is the words of Jeff Bezos. We are stubborn on vision, we are flexible on details.
So the pro tip for us marketers here is to find something we would never change unless the world ends. Then we can play about with all the rest and still reach our goals. Nice one. Let's get back to the speed of our boat. From the business point of view, implementing Agile should lead to higher profits. The reports state that 87% of teams become more productive after adopting Agile, 93% improve their speed to market, and 74% are generally satisfied with their daily jobs. Isn't that a big win for everyone? Sounds pretty tempting to try out.
Owners and bosses want teams to be effective, that's obvious. I can see many benefits of agile transformation, especially when it comes to keeping your team motivated. However, the planned effects are not that quick, as it's often expected, and should be set with the business beforehand. The success stories show that the full power of agile can be achieved 5 years down the road, or even more. 2 or 3 years is still about maturing and finding the balance, and we see this very clearly now in our own work. Then again, such a big shift in the workflow takes time and costs money. Consultants, tools, and additional meetings don't come for free. If someone's in a hurry and wants to speed up the process, then there's a risk of doing many things wrong, which generates even bigger costs. In the B2B environment, the decision-making cycle has grown up to 6 months and often involves more than 10 people. So it's simply nuts to say the campaign isn't working after 2 weeks when we don't even have the first results.
That's right. Also, we know that marketing teams never operate alone. We should cooperate strictly with business units and get into a common rhythm while working on the projects. What's the point of running faster alone when the rest is still jogging behind?
Yes, agile marketing is not effective when the team's got blockers and delays from the business side. Unfortunately, it's quite a common situation when someone expects quick delivery, but it takes them 2 more weeks to fill a short brief or review the ready material.
In software companies, this should never be a big problem, as many teams are already working in an agile way, so the marketing department can adapt easier and make use of the company's tools and best practices. What's your experience of making it work at Deviniti for the last year?
I'm convinced that it's really important to be flexible in the first place. The situation is changing so quickly that this is difficult to talk about rigid rules of operation. We work with 6 business units. The developers creating custom things for our customers, and the product owners who manage our Atlassian apps. We cooperate also with service, R&D, and sales team who sell partners' products. Some of them also use agile frameworks, although the dates of our sprints seldom coincide. This created such diversity that it's impossible for the marketing team to adapt to all of them. I suppose in this case it's them who have to adapt to us, but it works somehow. Everyone knows when we start our sprints. We have planning meetings scheduled with every unit. We inform them when they can expect the effects or project delivery. But we also keep their pace of work in mind and try to plan our activities so that they don't have to wait for us. Earlier, I was working on marketing and implementation of a single product, sold by one sales team, and then I was actually more flexible. But I knew exactly about the planned activities of each team, and our calendar was ruled by clients, not by us. It was a completely different reality.
So many projects at a time is really a nightmare. What else can block or slow down marketing teams?
For people outside marketing, our work seems easy. We draw some nice pictures, put up a campaign, spend $5,000 and get leads from it or not. But we know it's not that simple. We need to get to know what we are trying to sell, understand who it will be useful to and to whom we want to sell it, get to know the competition, check what they are doing, verify the data, check what has worked and what has not, think about what we want to show, what will convince customers to talk to us and finally buy something. Only then we can move on to advertising creations, and then we adjust these ads in the appropriate channels and do our best to get better results. I still believe that not every marketing project can be implemented in Agile. There are those that need to be planned beforehand, and then we have to stick to that plan. But it's still worth dividing them into smaller parts, implemented in shorter time frames, so that we can approach these pieces more flexibly. Is it still Agile? I'm not sure if such a view fits the official definition. Maybe it's more inspired by Agile?
Many teams get actually just a bit inspired. They adopt a small part of the practices, like daily stand-ups and Kanban boards, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Our team can be a great example here, as we're involved in a number of different projects and initiatives. Do you agree that organizing work in sprints, holding retros, and other stuff like this have a positive impact on team morale and productivity?
I cannot agree more. I really think that some agile-based practices should fall into the management standard in general. They help organize work and keep the team engaged no matter how you run your project. There are 2 routines that I like best. They are sprints and daily stand-ups. Employees feel better and work more efficiently when they understand the purpose of their jobs and break their work into smaller pieces, so they see the results quickly. Breaking their time into short sprints helps them stay motivated. It's easier to do one's best for 2 weeks than for a few months in a row. It also helps with catching errors and fixing something quickly. It's daily stand-ups that help me most in managing the team. Because, I can check the status of our tasks and projects at any time in our Jira, but I don't work with tasks. I work with people. Meeting the whole team every morning when everyone has the camera on and can speak up is the most important means of communication for me. This is my barometer of the moods in the team and people's attitude to that day, to work, to tasks, to me and to each other. Of course, everyone in the team can always just come over or call me, but I know it's not always easy, and it's often better if I get in touch first. The daily helps me start my workday well and keep my finger on the pulse, and of course, dailies make it possible for the whole team to be up to date and clear up any doubts right away.
Don't we just spend more time on meeting up than doing the actual work this way?
Well, if we as a team find it so, I can sacrifice a bit of feeling secure myself. That's the essence of agile operations for me. We do something for a reasonable period of time, then analyze how it went, and apply changes.
So let's talk about changes once again. We're living in crazy times that are slowly changing the way we think about work, business, and technology in general. Switching to Agile can potentially improve the ability to adapt to new situations and requirements of the world around us. I saw a quote by a director of operations who mentioned the pandemic and the upcoming recession as the factors that have mostly driven innovation and change in recent years. Do you think Agile could be a golden pill to these challenges?
I'm sorry, but I don't believe that there is one solution for every challenge. We still have areas of business that are easier to manage by sticking to procedures than improvising. For example, accounting, which has its own rules and deadlines. We still have exact goals to achieve, and the path to them requires deep thought and good planning. In order to react better to the changing reality, you need to be attentive and open to changes as well as to be reasonable and stay cool. Agile definitely works great in some industries or teams, but I don't think it's a cure-all. I have a great example from Deviniti. In 2020, the team has been preparing our biggest event of the year, Jira Day, for several months already. The event was to take place offline at the National Stadium in Warsaw. Shortly before the conference was due, a global pandemic was announced and the work of many organizations was shifted from offices to remote mode. It was clear that the Jira Day conference also has to be held remotely. There was little time for this change, so everyone got mobilized and adapted to the new action plan. But the conference didn't become more and more remote with every sprint.
That's true. In such a discussion, we can't get by the topic of tools used by Agile teams. Actually, many people still think that installing something like Atlassian Jira and making the teams work there is good enough for Agile adoption. What's your perspective on using software for managing marketing teams?
Turning on your Jira will not magically make your team work in a different way, but I must admit that I cannot imagine working today without Atlassian tools. We work in a team of almost 20 people. We operate for several business units and implement short-term projects and those that last up to a year. This is a large scale that cannot be controlled with a wall calendar on yellow post-its. And even email or Skype isn't good enough. That's why we use Jira, Confluence, and a few additional plugins. It also helps us to control the fly-ins by using the service desk functionality.
Could you please summarize the pros and cons that you see in using these tools?
Well, as far as I know, Atlassian creates tools that support agile operations and connect different teams inside and across the organization. So for us at Deviniti, Jira and Confluence are the main means of communication, project planning, and execution. We keep all the information related to our projects there, easily share it with stakeholders, and try to integrate the rest of our marketing technology stack as much as we can. As a manager, I especially appreciate the broad project management possibilities of these tools, as I can quickly find or filter anything I need. On the downside, Atlassian tools have much of a software development background, which influences the way they are built and meant to be used. Many people on our team who didn't have experience with such tools before were complaining at first. But after some time and a couple of training sessions, everyone now feels okay. Today, training with Jira is the standard of our marketing onboarding for new employees. Then again, implementing Jira is not a quick and cheap project, I should say, especially when you migrate from another tool. Processes and tools should go in hand, otherwise, the whole thing is no good at all. If we assume that tools are supposed to help people and not the other way around, then Jira will definitely work great in most circumstances. After proper configuration, this set of tools perfectly supports us in both agile and traditional projects. Our Atlassian Services department, who's a Platinum Enterprise Solution Partner, helps us out with knowledge and hands-on configuration. I heard they do even better for the customers who actually pay them.
They sure do. To sum up our discussion, what advice would you give your fellow CMOs who are just considering agile transformation or are in its early days?
First of all, the team should assess their readiness for such a transformation. There's a survey that found over half of the marketers almost never say no to projects, while another quarter doesn't have the authority to say no at all. To operate effectively, we should ensure that the team will be able to make decisions on their own and also have the budget that we can spend on experiments with no fear. Then we can set the first steps on the journey.
Right, so we shouldn't turn the whole world upside down within 2 weeks, should we?
Of course not. You see, a very strong agile feature is the ability of teams to self-organize. We can assemble a team for a special task or a project requiring high speed, and then it breaks down naturally when the project ends. The rest is not affected. They are still working on their core responsibilities. Let me put it straight. Even after 2 years, Deviniti marketing is not fully agile by definition, and it will probably never be. We describe our work situation as an in-house agency because of the huge diversity of projects, priorities, teams, and skills that we juggle on a daily basis. This requires a lot of flexibility, but also a strict order in processing projects and tasks.
Yeah, the reality is more complicated than what we read in books and manifestos.
Exactly. An experienced project manager who is fluent in many different methodologies will know where to apply each of them depending on the project. A real business situation is mostly some kind of a hybrid. The most important thing is to make sure the team knows the project goals and how to get there. So take your yearly KPIs, break them down into smaller iterations, and pick a couple of checkpoints along the way. A long-term strategy combined with an agile execution plan that allows for tweaking and making decisions is the best possible hybrid for me.
So in this approach, we mean changing as adapting and not imposing, right?
It's plain crazy to think that the whole organization will suddenly start working the way you do. Think in terms of strategy. Propose a small test project, show the results, and then you've got something to talk about. As a matter of fact, marketing is a great place to start the agile transformation of a whole company. But before, discuss your work cycles with sales and business teams so that you can adapt to each other gradually. Also, try adapting to your own team. If launching your average campaigns takes a month and it's 2 classic sprints, just try to go with month-long sprints.
I think that the most general conclusion is let's not focus on being agile or whatever, but instead on doing our jobs well and fulfilling our goals. Thank you, Agata, for joining us today and sharing your opinion.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to learn more on the topic, take a look at the description where I'll put links to the sources and facts we mentioned. Let us know how you liked this episode by mentioning Deviniti on social media and follow us for more. That's a wrap for today. See you in the next episode of Software Home by Deviniti.